Sweet. Well, we are here today in LA with Laura Cathcart Robbins today on the podcast. Welcome. Yeah. How are you?
I'm well. I'm noticing that we're sitting exactly the same way. With our hands folded over our knees and our legs crossed.
That was so subconscious.
We're mirrors of each other. I'm well. Thank you for asking.
Of course.
Yeah.
So today I wanted to kind of talk to you about your story with addiction and the different stigmas you've experienced in your life.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me a little bit about how you grew up. We were just kind of touching on it a little bit before we started.
So I have a very long growing up story, so I'm going to try to truncate it for you.
Of course.
But I grew up mainly in Cambridge, Mass. My parents got divorced when I was 4. So my dad moved to another state to practice medicine. So I always grew up between my mother's and my father's house, visiting him for summers, visiting him on Christmas or spring break, but living basically full time with my mom, who had remarried. And I had a very emotionally abusive stepfather. And I mention that because I think this is where my addiction started, or where I became ripe for an addiction. Was in a house where I wasn't allowed to be myself. Anytime I was, it seemed to rub him the wrong way. He was never violent toward me, but he was toward my mother. And so if I got on his nerves enough, she would end up getting it. Wow. So I learned to adjust in a way that I didn't get on his nerves or rub him the wrong way, so the household would be peaceful.
Wow.
Yeah.
You said you were made almost ripe for addiction.
Yes.
What do you mean by that?
Because looking back through my life, like that's just one example. I was also in an independent school in Cambridge, the Cambridge Montessori School. Shout out to them. I was the only Black kid there for a long time, and then eventually there were more, but I was the only one in my class always. I never had a Black classmate. And that was actually okay. It wasn't like people are like, that must have been so tough. It didn't feel like that to me when I was a kid, but there was a subtle editing that happened there as well. I wanted to be more like my peers, so I acted more like my peers. The neighborhood where I lived was Black lower class. Lower middle class, actually. Mm-hmm. These were homes with, two parents and, 2 working parents usually. They were homeowners. It was, clean, mature trees. It was beautiful, the neighborhood where I lived. But there was a culture there that was different than the culture at school. So I learned to code switch, to toggle between both cultures. So that editing that I did, every time I edited myself for a situation or for someone else, I think that it separated me from my authentic self. And I think by the time my addiction took hold, it was because I was so far away from my authentic self that I didn't even know who it was anymore.
I haven't really had anybody come on and speak on code switching.
Yeah.
I feel like it affects a lot of minorities.
Sure.
What are some other examples where you feel like you've had a code switch in your life?
It's not something that I think about when I walk into a room. I don't think, I'm not going to say these words because they won't understand them. I'm not going to use, refer to these cultural touchstones in my life because they aren't the same cultural touchstones for them. I just automatically do it. I think that's why it's code switching, because you just immediately go into a situation and, for instance, this is like addiction might be something that I might eliminate from my conversations going into a room. I sit on a couple of boards. So I might, if we're all talking about our experience with something, I might leave out my experience with addiction, not because I'm ashamed of it, but because it might raise an issue that they're not familiar with and create more questions than is necessary. Mm-hmm. So that's one way. Certainly as a Black woman in rooms full of white people, I code switch all the time because there are just things about, like, I'm a hip hop head. I grew up like Rapper's Delight was the first like national rap song in 1979. And me and my friends knew all the words and every single song that came out in that genre afterwards. That's what we did. That feels like it's all we did. So when people refer to like rock bands of the 70s, 80s, and 90s, I have no idea what they're talking about. And people assume that because I speak a certain way, I use standard English, that I'm probably more familiar with the culture of the dominant culture. And I'm not.
Yeah.
You know, I have learned it, but I didn't live it.
You were code switching in school, and
Yeah.
and how else was it growing up?
I mean, so I ended up dropping out of high school right after the
Really?
ninth grade.
Why?
This goes back to the abusive stepfather. And it wasn't anything in particular that he was doing. It was just that my household was really chaotic and I was struggling in school. I had gone to this very, intimate private school where there were more teachers than students at a
Wow.
time in my class. And thrown into my first public school, which was Berkeley High School, there were 3,000 kids in 5 campus buildings. And I literally got lost. It took me a week to find all my classes when everybody had been in class for a week. And I just wasn't up to my level in math. The English that I had been taught was different than Joyce and the Iliad. Like the books that people had read to prepare them for ninth grade were not the books that I read. And I didn't have the study habits that they did. And so I just kind of one by one stopped going to classes, but I kept going to school. And that worked because it was an open campus and everybody had a free period at a different time.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of ninth grade, I had been intercepting the letters home from the school. So, they didn't have email.
Yeah.
They literally sent a letter. And so I had been catching them before my mother saw them. And one of them got by and she was alarmed, obviously. And they asked me, because I was so far behind, if I would consider remedial classes or retaking ninth grade.
For sure.
And I said, no,
You're like, I'm done here.
I'm not doing that. So I
Yeah.
got a job in a sauna, the Berkeley sauna. That's where I lived then. We lived in Berkeley then. So I got a job there, and then I got another job after that, and I just started working.
Yeah, so you're like, I'm just doing this working thing. Screw
Yeah.
school right now.
Yeah.
Did you despise having to, like, your home being separated from your dad and your mom?
No, that wasn't hard. It was because I think it happened when I was 4. It was just the only reality I knew. So I didn't, I have been told that I threw myself on the ground screaming and crying when he first left. I don't remember that though. All I remember is going back and forth between them. And they were also really good friends. So they raised me together. They made decisions together. He was in Cambridge a lot. She would often go down to Florida. That's where he is. With me. So it didn't feel like a complete separation. It just kind of felt like that was my life.
Do you think that subconsciously or had an effect, you think?
The separation?
Yeah, like
I mean-
even if you don't remember it, I feel like even
It was
Things that
traumatic
yeah.
because obviously that's trauma for a 4-year-old to be that bereft. But I think that I was far more affected by the stepfather who lived with us than I was by the absence of my biological father. Yeah.
Sure. I'm curious, did your mom stay with your stepfather?
Right until after I dropped out of school. Yeah. So I was around 14 when they got divorced. It was a painful separation for both of them. So it wasn't like, hell yeah, we did it. It was, and it took a long time for it
Yeah.
to be completely separated. Finally, he moved back to Cambridge and then it felt more complete then.
For sure.
Yeah.
So what started happening once you started working? How did addiction come
So-
into play?
Yeah. I mean, I think this is one of the ways I'm unique in recovery is that I just hated alcohol when I was a teenager. So I was a late drinker.
Mm-hmm.
I remember being like 18, 19 and pretending to take sips of beer when everybody else was drinking because it was the cool thing to do, but I just didn't like it.
Mm-hmm.
I never liked alcohol. I just never liked the way it tasted. I always drank those really fruity, sweet drinks that everybody hates.
Mm-hmm.
And I did, this goes against what I just said. So freebasing was invented in Berkeley, at UC Berkeley, actually. Two scientists figured out how to distill cocaine down to its purest form in a lab with baking soda, water, and cocaine, and started smoking it. When I was still there, before there was crack, there was freebasing had just really started. And it was very like you would go to a party in the Oakland Hills or the Berkeley Hills, and it would be catered and a bar, and people would be smoking cocaine.
Wow.
So it was very glamorous. Like people were dressed up, and I went to the first party where I witnessed that, not realizing what it was. The second party, I tried it. And then I did it off and on for about a year on the weekends. I really liked it a lot. But my parents started getting, this is now my mom and my actual dad, started getting just like, why are you gone basically all weekend? And where are you going and what's happening? And so when I turned 19, I just stopped. They were too worried. They were getting all up in my business. It wasn't my be-all, end-all, so I just stopped. And then I think throughout my 20s, I had a relatively normal relationship with alcohol. I would drink. I was a publicist. I ended up opening a PR firm.
Oh, wow.
When I moved to Los Angeles in '88. And, drinking it would get in the way of my job because almost all our business was on the East Coast. So I had to be in my office at like 6:30 to deal with those East Coast calls. So I couldn't really stay out late.
Mm-hmm.
Things hadn't flipped for me yet, where I believe that I crossed an invisible line when I stepped into addiction, and I hadn't crossed that line yet. So I wasn't obsessed with alcohol. I drank socially. It was fun, but it wasn't everything. And when it would get in the way of my life, I wouldn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of what my 20s looked like. I met my then husband when I was 27. We got married when I was 31. I shuttered my PR company when I got pregnant that year.
You said you shut it.
I shut it. Yeah, I fired I didn't fire everybody. I actually got everybody else jobs.
Oh,
Everybody that
great.
worked for me, I got them a job somewhere in the industry.
That's great.
And I shut my company down because I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had my first son, and then the second son came the following year. And that's when I crossed that invisible line.
What was the invisible line?
The invisible line was, I was never diagnosed with anything, but looking back at what my life looked like then, which was like no sleep, nerves just frayed, always, every pre-wake up whimper I heard on the monitor. Sorry, it's hard for me not to look at you too. I'm so used to doing the interviewing and looking at both people.
You can look at me too.
Okay.
Yeah. We have like a nice family show here.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, he's like laughing over there. He's great.
But I want to like include you in the conversation. But yeah, so I was, like strung out, but without drugs. I was just like because my nerves were so, I can't think of what the word is right now, but I was really irritable. I was agitated all the time. I startled easily. And it got to the point where even when they were asleep, I couldn't sleep because I was so tuned in to like, if they wake up, they're going to need me.
Yeah.
And they were, one was older than the other, but they were both babies still. And they did need me. I didn't need to be as vigilant as I was. But anyway, I think that I had postpartum anxiety. But there wasn't that diagnosis then. There was only postpartum depression, which I didn't meet any of the markers for. I wasn't listless. I wasn't crying. I wasn't, unable to get out of bed. I was the parent association president, during this time, not then. But I was the room parent, at their preschool when they were like, I was taking, I took tennis lessons 3 times a week. I went to the gym. I got my nails done. I got my hair done. My ex-husband was in the industry, so we went to premieres. I threw dinner parties. Like I was up and out a lot. I did a lot of stuff socially. So it didn't look like depression. But what I understand now is that, because my nerves were shot and my nervous system was so like it had been, what's the word? It's destabilized, which also nobody said then that, that the doctors didn't have a word for what I was. So what I was offered was a sleeping pill called Ambien. And he told me, I'd never heard of it. It was brand new then.
Wow.
Everybody kind of knows about Ambien now. But then there were like other tranquilizers, like Halidol, and I don't even know what else because I hadn't taken any of those. I had taken pain meds a few times and actually really liked those, but was also like when they, when I finished the prescription, then that was the last of them. I wasn't seeking those out. I wasn't somebody really familiar with drugs, and I was scared to take the first one.
Wow.
But let me tell you, that first one, it was the solution I never knew I needed. It was like, as soon as I took the pill, nothing happened. And then this heat started like behind my eyes and in my head, and it filled my whole body with warmth.
Wow.
And then it felt like everything turned to like this golden oil. Like everything was like squishy and yummy. And I just started falling into this sleep, like a sleep that I'd never known before. And my first thought when I woke up the next morning was, again, please. Like, I want to do that again. It wasn't the beginning of the addiction. The addiction took a couple years because I got a bottle of 30 that year. Yeah. And that's probably how many I took that year.
Wow.
By the end, I was taking almost 10 a day.
Wow.
Yeah.
I 100% understand that feeling that you're talking about.
Yeah.
It was so interesting because my personal drug of choice was Xanax.
Ah, yes.
Street Xanax. It wasn't something that wasn't safe whatsoever. It was not prescribed from a doctor. So I would go get the pill from a plug, and I'd be in my car, wash it down with some alcohol, and it's like I didn't even feel the effects of the Xanax yet, but I felt this relief, and I could just breathe, and I felt warmth and excited because I was like, I know that high is coming in about 20, 30 minutes.
Yeah, totally.
It's crazy how it works because I don't know. It's really odd.
I just because you just said that, I just want to read you. It's really quick. But thank you so much. It's in it's my prologue.
Wow.
For years, I've prided myself on keeping it hidden. I hide it in decoy pill bottles in our guest bathroom. I hide it in my coat pockets and my makeup bags. I hide it in the toes of my rain boots and 2 rows behind the vanilla extract in the kitchen cabinet. I keep copious coded notes in my journals and Filofax writing down dates and places. I keep journals hidden in a rusty, locked trunk in our attic. Refill days are like the 4th of July, or better yet, Christmas. The joy of driving out of the pharmacy parking lot with a full bottle. I sing along with Beyonce or Gwen Stefani at the top of my lungs as I fly down Ventura Boulevard, smiling back at guys in their cars at stoplights. Why not? Life is freaking dope right about now. The moment just before I take the first one is always so sweet. I fish the bottle out of the bag and hold it lovingly in my hand before giving it a shake. The weight is good. Thank you, God. I feel like the fact that I can tell you how many pills are in a bottle just by the weight is a rare skill set. But I've never quite figured out where it would be most useful. A carnival, perhaps? Give me a bottle, any bottle, and I'll tell you how many pills are contained within. I brace myself for the endorphin rush that I'll get just after popping the child-proof cap. It's so instant and powerful that it reminds me of the brain freezes I used to get when eating snow cones too fast. At the same time, I am already fearing the moment my beloved bottle is empty again. And that moment seems to come sooner and sooner every time.
Wow.
But it just reminded me so much of
course.
what you were talking about, because there's the anticipation of it is almost as powerful as the high itself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I want to like really speak to a doctor and like, what is that psychologically about? Because it's crazy.
It's a dopamine hit, right?
I know, like I'm salivating as well.
Yeah. Which is how I know that I can get as loaded and fucked up from a drug within me as I can from something I take. One of the reasons I couldn't sleep is because I would get anxious, and then adrenaline would shoot through my body. So I could not calm myself down enough to sleep because of the drug inside of me, which was adrenaline, which is that fight or flight, right? My body's ready to go.
Yeah.
It's not ready to go to sleep.
Yeah.
And the dopamine, the oxytocin, like all those things that I now have to work for, right? I have to work out for.
Right.
I have to, make human connections for. Like these are the things I still get those releases, but they're more incremental and they're more appropriate.
Yeah.
But that anticipation is a dopamine hit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that just highlights on delayed gratification.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's so much more powerful than that instant gratification. And that's that practice of being in recovery is something that we learn. It's like, wow, there's no more instant gratification anymore. I really have to work for things now.
It's so disappointing. It really is. It's like, what do you mean forever?
Yeah.
I guess I could do this for a month, but like for the rest of my life?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, you started taking the pill and you said it took years to get to that point.
About 6.
About 6.
Mm-hmm.
It's also funny, like our different timelines, because for me, it took maybe 2 years for me to get to my worst.
Mm-hmm.
And then for some, it can be 10, 6. It's a different timeline for everybody that will just like drive them to the end. Like something does need to change here.
Yeah. And I think that actually speaks to what you asked me before we even started the interview, because I am very controlling. I had this image that I needed to protect at all costs. And I think that kept me out of my bottom for a while. I also had 2 little kids. I was a mom. At this point, by the time my kids entered school, by the time my addiction was about to take over, I was the Parent Association president. I had just been asked to join the board at their school. I was the mom everybody turned to. I was that carpool mom. So I had to keep my addiction in check so that I wasn't driving my kids around loaded, driving someone else's kids around loaded. I white-knuckled my way through days and nobody knew, and I could get loaded at night. That's when I got loaded, was at night.
Wow.
At the end, I couldn't do it just at night anymore, and that's when I had to get help.
What effect did this, because you also said you were married, and
Yes.
I believe.
Not for long. No, that was the year I checked myself into treatment was the year I got divorced.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so what effect did this all have on marriage? Because I feel like I personally don't have that perspective as much. I'm assuming your partner at the time wasn't somebody who
Knew?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. I'm like, what's the tea?
He did not know. So, I talked about editing myself, altering myself from the time that I was a little kid all through. This is the way I entered my marriage, was by assessing what the world looked like that my now ex-husband occupied and adjusting myself to fit in that world. So the woman that he fell in love with was a version of me, but it was not the authentic me. My idea was that I could grow into that version and embrace it, the one that I was trying to create. Again, this isn't like I plotted this out. This is just like step by step. Oh, I can do that. Oh, I don't know what all those forks are for. I will learn that. Like, I didn't know Gucci had a kitchen, but I'll act like I did. Like,
Gucci has a kitchen.
Yes. You can go and shut Gucci down for breakfast and you can shop if you have enough money. Yeah. So I didn't know any of these things. So I'm coming into this very posh world and trying to act like I'm not new to it. trying to blend in. And so that, I think, was unsustainable in any relationship, but especially something as intimate as a marriage. The version that I had created was not a sustainable version of myself without drugs and alcohol. And alcohol came into the picture when I got really addicted because I used it to boost the Ambien. The Ambien itself was no longer giving me the effect that I needed, so I would drink along with it to boost it. So alcohol became a necessary ingredient of my cocktail at this point, whereas before it was very take it or leave it. So in my marriage, at that point in my marriage, my ex-husband was on location a lot. The year that I write about in Stash My Life in Hiding is actually 10 months, where he's away most of the time. So when I'm bottoming out, he's really not there to witness it so much.
Wow.
But when he was there, I was very careful to get myself together. Like the house was together, the dinners were together, my hair was together. Like there were no cracks in the exterior. Except, I was disappearing. So emotionally, what I had to offer anybody was very, very shallow. The only people who got all of me, got the authentic me, and got that emotional connection were my children. Period. Nobody, not my parents. Quickly and quietly, I was cutting everybody out of my life that demanded too much of me, which is just to demand that I'm myself with them. Because that was too risky. They might see what was wrong. And so I made my world very small. Ex-husband's coming in and out. He's seeing that something's odd. I ask for a divorce. He thinks that's what's going on. And then eventually I have this talk with him and I let him know exactly what's been going on and that I have to go to treatment. We're still getting the divorce, but I have to go to treatment.
Did you want a divorce because you felt like you couldn't authentically be yourself?
I don't think it was that simple. I think maybe in hindsight, that's the reality of it. But I think at the time, it just felt like there was just too much distance. And the truth was, I had spent so much time away from myself, I really didn't know who I was. And I needed some time by myself to find that out.
Yeah, because what you knew was almost shape-shifting yourself.
Yes.
To fit whatever somebody may have wanted or needed you to be.
I was always a role. His wife, their mom, their daughter, their friend, RPA president. I was never just Laura.
What does that look like today?
Oh.
Being authentically yourself. How do you do that now?
Yeah. Well, I will say that I was always some version of my authentic self. I was just never every version of it at times. So I was never somebody else entirely. So I didn't completely lose the connection with who I was. I just didn't know how to act like that. I didn't know how to be that. And, I always say practice makes a practice. So I would, try things out and see, like when I first got sober, I was newly sober, single mom. And, okay, so what do I want to buy for groceries? I always bought for everybody else. What do I want to eat?
Yeah.
And then ew, I thought I liked that. I don't like that anymore. Let me figure out what I like now. And, shopping for that instead of just shopping for what I should have in the refrigerator. It started as basic as that. And then it's how do I want to spend my free time? What brings me joy? What do I love doing besides being with my kids, which was my number one source of joy. Always. You can see my office has pictures of my kids all over it. They are, we are just, I'm so lucky because we are incredibly close and we have been close. We never had a period where we were distant. And I know that's not always the case when you're talking about a parent in recovery. But I needed to figure out, besides them, what else brought me joy. And, what I found is I go back to reading and writing because, I don't have a formal education, but I have an education through all the books I've read. I've always been this avid reader. I've always eaten books for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And I've always written. And so I start taking these writing classes and see if that's something. I didn't think I would be a writer. I thought I would direct commercials. That's kind of why I moved to LA. I thought I was going to be a commercial director. That didn't work out. But But then I ended up in publicity and then opened my own PR agency, but I didn't want to do that. That didn't bring me joy. So after, taking classes, and then also, I go to recovery groups, recovery support groups, and I started doing that from the beginning. And that was really a key component to my being able to go outside of that and figure out what brought me joy and who I was. And I found out that writing is a really crucial element of me. It's how I express myself, it's how I make sense of things. And that when I write and put it out in the world, it makes sense of other people's lives for them too. Like people can connect to it. And I get those DMs and I get those, emails of people saying, thank you for writing this. And it's not just my memoir, it's also all the articles I've written and the essays I've written. So this is what I found, is that I've developed a practice of being myself after trying out different things and practicing different things.
I really relate to that as well, because I truly feel like I never knew myself up until I got sober. So coming out to LA at 18, getting sober, I didn't even know like my favorite food, like things of that nature. I really relate to what you said. Like, what do I even want to buy from the grocery store? I didn't even know like the simplest, most basic things about myself, like what makes me comfortable and all of that. So it's really been a journey the past 3.5 years of getting to know myself, and even just those little things. And then over time, I've dove in deeper in that. So I really relate.
Yeah.
And then you also said you were kind of in the industry. And you also said your husband you wanted to direct commercials, you were a PR person. And I feel like my perception of Hollywood is almost inauthenticity.
Oh, it's the world of make-believe. It is.
Yeah, so
yeah.
What's kind of, your take on it, and why do you want nothing to do with it? And maybe why?
No, I'd love to make somebody to make a movie out of my book for sure. I think that because I'm in Los Angeles and because I'm really active in our recovery community here.
Yeah.
I have a lot of friends. Like I'm an anomaly. I didn't move here to be an actress, and I've never been a person that's in front of a camera. But most of the people that I know who moved here for that purpose. They want to be in front of the camera. And I think that a lot of people have really solid recovery, even though when they go to work, their acting is to turn on a different character. So I think it absolutely has a place. Like, I love TV and movies. Yeah. It's another thing that I discovered about myself, is that I love to just like get under the blankets and watch TV at night and watch different shows. Scott and I love to go to the movies. We go almost every week to the movies. That's something we enjoy and we get to do. So I really appreciate it as a medium. I think the world can be hard on people that don't succeed in it. But I don't think that I think you can have really solid recovery and be a part of that world as well.
So you said it took 6 years.
Yeah.
With taking the Ambien, for it to get to kind of like your bottom. Can you tell me a little bit about what your bottoms and maybe your worst moments, or what maybe your thought process was to almost like justify or rationalize that, oh, it's not that bad?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that I was going to say, you had asked me before the interview about my resistance to admitting that I was someone who needed help, and I was incredibly resistant. So I really tried every other thing. Even when I was drowning, I was just like, I can do this.
Yeah.
I just need X, Y, or Z. I just need one more refill, and then I'll stop. I'll wean myself off with that one, or this time it'll be different thinking, which was like every time, and so at this point, so I'm talking like February 2008 to July 2008. Anytime I didn't have Ambien in my system, I was in a wicked, horrible withdrawal. I had to have some in my system all the time to prevent it. And it was painful. I wouldn't be able to be in public with it because like my eyelids would flutter. I couldn't look people in the eye.
Wow.
I was shaking and sweating. And I was the parent association president. And I was, on the board of trustees for this school. So I could not be like that. So I really tried to manage it for a long time. And I did manage it, to my detriment. I would, end up on the floor in a ball on my bathroom floor, detoxing, and then get up and get my kids up and get them to school and, do all this stuff. And I'd be a shaking, just like shell of myself for the day. How many days until I get the next refill, 2 or 3 days, is what I got to go through. I wouldn't sleep during that time. There's something called rebound insomnia, that once you stop taking the thing that puts you to sleep, your brain wakes up with this anxiety and needs it to go back to sleep. And so when I didn't have it, I couldn't sleep. The bottom is pretty anticlimactic to most people. But certainly there were several things that could have been my bottom leading up until that point. But the point where I made the decision to go to treatment, and I made the decision and then went 10 days later, we had a summer house in Malibu, and I was there with the kids. It was 4th of July. And I sent them with their neighbors to go watch the fireworks on the barge because I was in withdrawal and I couldn't take them. And I told them I had a headache. It's very convenient because I did, along with lots of other things. And I then went through the house and took every single thing I had. I found 3 pills. I had 4 Benadryl, and I had like this much vodka. And so I took the pills, I took the Ambien, I took the Benadryl, and I washed it down with vodka. And I was exactly the same as I was before I did all that.
Wow.
It didn't move the needle at all. And I was like, okay, this is it. I can't get high. And I can't be sober because this is torture. And I don't mean sober like in recovery. I just mean like without anything in my body. So I'm going to have to get help to get through this. And I didn't even have any tears. I was so dehydrated. I just kind of like dry cried on the bathroom floor. Wow. I spent a lot of time on the bathroom floor. My kids came back and they were all like, Mom, we saw the fireworks. Oh. And I was like trying my best, to be cheerful for them and be normal. I wanted to be normal for my kids. And the next day, I don't remember this actually, but the next day, apparently I emailed somebody in recovery. I didn't find this out until almost a year later. In my mind, I called the center myself and got myself into treatment. But apparently this person made the arrangements for me. So I was in some kind of brownout mode. I was also so scared all the time. Even without drugs, when I get really scared, I go into kind of a brownout. Like I operate, but I'm not really present for what's happening.
What's a brownout?
So a brownout is different than a blackout. A blackout is when you remember nothing, but your body goes through the motions like you're awake and present.
Yeah.
A brownout's when you're like, you're there, but you're kind of panicking in your head and you're thinking about things other than what's in front of you. Like maybe you get an email that is scary, right?
Yeah.
We're going to cut off your power in 10 minutes, but you're in an interview. So you're in the interview and maybe you're still asking questions, but your mind is on that email and you're consumed with terror. That's what a brownout is. You're present, but you're not really present. And so maybe you'll answer the wrong question or maybe you'll say the wrong thing because you're not really there. And for me, I don't remember it as well. Like I'll be like, oh my God, that was the interview where I got that terrible email. I don't even remember what they said to me.
Yeah. That
kind of thing. So anyway, but I got myself to treatment 10 days later at the Meadows in Wickenburg, Arizona. I snuck as many drugs as I could in with me. And I also snuck vodka in. And this is great. I emptied Evian bottles, small ones, filled them with vodka, took my kids' glue gun and resealed the caps.
Wow.
So that they wouldn't come off when twisted and got away with it.
Wow.
That would never happen now,
Yeah.
but it happened then. And but my drugs and vodka ran out really quickly, and I ended up going through a horrific withdrawal. There, I was devastated to be away from my kids for 30 days. I had never been away from them that long, and I was a mess. I was a mess the whole time.
Isn't it funny that we go out to seek help, but as we're going out to seek that help in treatment and rehab, we're like, I'm gonna sneak in a bunch of vodka and substances.
Well, they're not going to give me enough, for sure. They're not going to know how to treat me. I'm going to supplement whatever they do because I know what I need.
Exactly. We think we know all. We know the best. We negotiate our treatment.
Yes.
It's so funny.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I still think I know best for me. I do. I have to temper that because I have kind of a recovery governance committee. I call them, these 3 wise women that I check in with and run things by. But, I still, left to my own devices, I would just run with stuff.
So you just got to the point where you ran out of substances in your treatment center.
Yeah.
How did your recovery
look like
about?
there? Or,
yeah. Did you go to treatment that one time and stay sober?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I did. So I'll be 17 years sober this July.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's rare. Most people
yes.
need a few times in treatment to really get that thing.
The stakes were really high for me, though. I was in the middle of a divorce. If I had not gone to treatment or not stayed sober, I wouldn't have been able to retain custody of my children.
Yeah.
And I wasn't willing to let that happen.
Yeah. So how did you open your mind to the thought of recovery?
I had a very, high-powered, driven divorce attorney. One of these, the women you see in movies, like one of those Hollywood divorce attorneys who is like, we're going to take everything. And she gave me this laundry list of stuff to do. I would not have done this stuff if she had not given it to me. But one was to go to meetings every day, recovery meetings. The other was to get a sponsor. Another was to drug test until the divorce mediation so that nobody could call in my sobriety into question. And, she wanted me to be the first mom in the pickup line and, resume my duties as parent association president. Like she wanted the optics to read, this is a mom on her job, right? And then she also wanted the other optics to read, this is a mom who's serious about her recovery. So I was not serious about my recovery. I hated recovery.
Wow.
I hated going to those meetings. I hated drug testing. I sat in the back of recovery meetings. I came in late. I left early. I kept my arms folded. Don't talk to me. Don't touch me. I'm not holding your hand at the end. I'm definitely not saying a prayer with you. And I did that for months. Very, very resistant, only compliant, not surrendered. And then this woman stood up once at this meeting, little teeny woman, looked nothing like me. We have completely different backgrounds.
Mm-hmm.
And she was addicted to Ambien, and she was the parent association president at her kid's school, and she was on the board. She had just joined. I mean, it was like mirror experience.
Wow.
And so I ended up asking her to sponsor me because I was like, well, I mean, if there's anybody that's going to do this, it's got to be her. And I just picture it like, when you leave butter out of the refrigerator, it softens over time. It doesn't immediately get soft. That's how I was. I just I kept going because I had to, because my kids were at stake. I did not go because I wanted to or because I felt like I was getting anything out of it. But eventually, actually what happened was I was 1 year sober and I took a cake, the only cake I was going to take. And it was only because the woman who was sponsoring me told me to. And someone asked me to sponsor them. And I was like, you definitely don't want me. I don't know anything about this. I haven't read any of those books. Like, you don't want me. And she's like, oh, I want you. I've been waiting for you to turn a year. I really want you to sponsor me. And so I started getting into the literature of this program with her, for her. But it ended up, having that osmosis effect into me. And I just started to live differently and live a life that was more honest. And because it was more honest, it was more authentic. And I started being more open-minded. Maybe this could be true too. Maybe this could be nice as well. Maybe I don't have to be a joiner. 'Cause I hate people who are joiners. Like, I don't want to join anything.
Yeah.
I don't want to be a part of a circle of women who do this and that together. And, eventually that's, of course, exactly what ended up happening. I actually have a circle of women that I sponsor. There are 10 of them. And we meet every month and go over things. And I'm part of a different group. And it's just, it's the way that it is. And it's a design for living that I decided I really wanted. And for me, that anxiety I talked about, and I don't identify as an anxious person. I don't remember having much experience with anxiety before I had my kids. But I have a life where I wake up calm. Serene. First of all, I wake up. That was another thing. No, but I couldn't go to sleep before.
Yeah.
And so now I sleep and then I wake up and my heart's not beating out of my chest. I'm not dreading the day. I'm excited to get to my workout, to go into my meditation, to get to writing, which is what I do full time now.
Wow.
I'm excited to talk to, like everything that I do through the day brings me some kind of joy. And I go to sleep without any problems because I don't have a pounding heart. I don't, I'm not worried or ruminating on what I might need to do or what I didn't do. I go to bed every day pretty clean. Both my parents are still alive. I'm so blessed. I'm very clean with them. I am up to date with everybody in my life.
Wow.
So if I lost anybody at this point in my life, I wouldn't have that regret if I should have. I didn't. I wanted to. I'm right there. And that's because of the recovery that I live.
Mm.
So I think the absence of anxiety, and this is not true for people who have anxiety disorders, et cetera, that's a chemical imbalance. And I get that. I don't believe I have that chemical imbalance. And I think the absence of anxiety is due to the fact that I live this honest, authentic life with boundaries. I don't overcommit. I don't do things that might cause me to wake up or not be able to sleep that night. So I wake up later. Like, I'm really precious with my time. Even this, right? I'm conscious of how much time this is going to take out of my day and how much more I have to do today. So I'm going to plan that so I'm not overwhelmed. I don't leave late for anything because that makes me anxious. I'm driving there thinking, am I going to be there on time? I'm pissed off at people that slow down in front of me. I leave early, right? So I have all the time in the world to get there. You can, I'll let you in. You don't even have to cut me off. Get in. That's fine. I have 15 minutes. I'm 5 minutes away. And so those are the kind of solves, those are the hacks that I've learned to prioritize my recovery and my serenity.
I love that.
Yeah.
We cause our own anxiety.
Yes. Yes.
In a lot of sense. Because I don't believe I have that chemical imbalance either. It's literally me doing it to myself. Like, I'm doing the things that make me anxious. Like, I'm addicted to nicotine. Me not having that nicotine because I'm like withdrawing, I'm anxious.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's gonna cure my anxiety, even though no, in reality it's making me more anxious. I don't manage my time well. Of course it's gonna lead me to have more anxiety. I don't have enough time to finish editing this podcast. I don't have enough time to meet with Laura today. All these things.
Yeah.
It's like it's more simple than I thought.
It's more simple, but also society loves a go girl. So the more you are doing, the more applauded you are by society, and probably the society of your peers and society at large. Like, if you've accomplished 20 things in a day, people are like, damn, like you got that done. And you're applauded for that. You're rewarded for that. So what I find is the way that I've kind of whittled my life down, people are skeptical of it. Like you don't want to go out with us tonight, or you don't want to do this. And I'm like, no, I love you guys, but I've done my going out for this week. So this is it. I'm resting tonight. This is more important for me. And knowing myself that well, which was that journey that we talked about. And like I said, prioritizing my time. Nicotine is harder to kick for some people than heroin. Also because it's more socially acceptable.
Oh, yeah.
So there's not as much of a stigma as there is for, an illegal drug. Same with alcohol, of course. Actually, alcohol is very much embraced by society. Nicotine is not quite as embraced. Big tobacco is trying to fix that. But, it's hard to kick. It's hard to kick. I never smoked, but my dad tells a story about dropping acid in med school and all the cigarettes turned into snakes, his cigarettes. And that's when he stopped.
Wow.
Smoking.
Maybe I need to have an experience like that.
Yeah. It scared him.
Yeah.
It scared him. He was like, oh, no more.
No, that's symbolic.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on psychedelics? I love hearing people's takes.
So, yeah, I think I have a few friends that are in recovery that have used psychedelics to treat trauma and to unblock things. I personally don't feel any need for them. I did something once when I was like 15 with friends. I don't even know what it was, like a quarter hit of something. I hated it. It was like some kind of acid.
It was a hit?
Yeah, it was like a quarter. It? No. It's just like...
it was like a paper?
It's like a paper.
Yeah, it was probably acid.
Yeah. And I was just like, it was the worst. I felt like I was trapped in my head. I didn't like anything about that experience. I couldn't wait till it left my body. And I don't feel like there's trauma that I can't get to work on. If I was blocked from something, maybe I would explore it, but I haven't felt the need. But I don't have any judgment against people who do.
Yeah. I want to hear more of your thoughts on doctor prescriptions, like doctors prescribing, because you got hooked on a prescription. A doctor prescribed you Ambien, and that's how your addiction kind of went off the rails.
Yeah. Ambien is a really great drug, honestly. It is. No, not just like because I loved it, but it's for the what it was created for and the way it's intended to be used. It's a great drug. It's meant as a reset drug. It's not meant for long-term, insomnia. It's not meant to treat it that way. But what it's meant to do is come in and reset your system to be taken for 10 days max.
Wow.
And then to allow your body or allow your brain to naturally produce melatonin again. And basically it shows your brain how to produce enough melatonin to get you to sleep. So it's kind of retraining your brain to do that. Once you take it beyond that, your brain loses the ability to produce melatonin.
Wow.
And the more you take it, the more it loses it. So by the time, 6 years in, when I was taking all those pills every day, my brain had no shot of creating its own melatonin. So it took a long time after I stopped to be able to sleep, which of course made me want to take it again.
Yeah.
So that I could reset my system and sleep. But I had gone beyond that point. It wasn't about resetting my system anymore. So I think it's a great drug for people, like if that's the intended use and they use it as prescribed, beautiful. Do that. My dad's an allopath, which means that he believes that there's a drug for every ailment. And so I was raised with that mentality. It's a very unpopular mentality, but he writes a prescription when people come to him with an ailment. And so I think that there's great use for medication for people. I think if you're in a tremendous amount of pain, you should take pain meds, whether you're in recovery or not. I think pain is more detrimental to the body than the absence of it would, in that, obviously you have to weigh the risks of anything. If I'm a heroin addict and someone offers me a pain med, I'm going to be a lot more hesitant, but I've taken pain meds in sobriety. And, I told you before, I used to really like them. I hated them in sobriety. I couldn't wait to stop taking them. And I took them, exactly as prescribed. Scott held them for me. So he had control of the bottle when, I never took them for more than 3 days, never more than 2 pills a day. But I needed them. I had 2 surgeries and I had to recover from it. And being in pain would not have done me any good. In fact, it would have deterred my healing. It would have, slowed the growth of my healing. So I think that when people need psych meds, I think it's really important that they get them.
Yeah.
I know somebody who was in the rooms with me when I first got sober, who was told in a meeting that you couldn't take any prescription drugs. And I think it was almost 2 months later, she just ran out in the middle of traffic and got hit by a car and killed herself. Like, she was one of the people that needed psych meds in order to be sober. And I never forgot that. Obviously, it's really traumatic, but also just that lesson. It's like, we're not doctors. We don't know what people need. And I think whatever you get is between you and your doctor.
100%.
But tell somebody else. Tell somebody in recovery, because doctors spend literally about a day on mental health and addiction treatment in med school, maybe 2 days. They don't know all there is to know, and they need to be checked.
There's so many things with that. Oh
Yeah.
my goodness. I would like to think like I forgot, what was the word you used for your dad?
An allopath.
I don't really believe in that.
I would say it's very unpopular. Most people don't.
Very unpopular
Yeah.
opinion. I do agree as well, like psych meds, and there's certain medications that like even in recovery we might need. But of course with caution, like let's weigh the pros and cons and like, is this a good decision? Not just like impulsively like yes or impulsively no.
Mm-hmm.
Like really thinking it through. I'm so sorry to hear about the woman.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and I just don't believe that there's just one way of recovery.
Yeah,
and
I
I don't
agree.
I feel like that's something people don't like about the 12-step. I don't
Right.
even know if it's about the program itself. It's more so maybe about the community in it. Sometimes they find it as perhaps toxic is the closest word I can find for it.
Yeah.
Because recovery doesn't look just the same for every single person. It's different for everyone. And that's also something I really want to highlight on this platform. Like, you can be sober and still maybe take a certain medication that some people may consider controversial if they're in recovery as well.
Yeah. I mean, one of the traditions of the 12-step program I'm in is that they have no opinion on outside issues.
Yeah.
Anything outside of getting sober, the organization has no opinion. It's the people inside the organization
Yes.
that have the
and
opinions.
that's exactly. And that's not the program itself.
Yeah.
But the people is almost like what makes the majority of the program. So I hate that some people have a horrible experience because of something somebody says.
Yeah. Yeah, I
in
do
those
too.
rooms. So yeah, I think that's what I had to say about that.
And, I think that going back to what you said earlier, and it might have been before we started the interview, about being Black in recovery.
Yeah.
One of the things that I experienced when I came in was walking into an all-white recovery room and feeling very much the only one and wanting to leave. So one of the ways I'm of service in this program is to be in those rooms. I go to meetings so that when the next Black woman walks in, she's not the only one, that she sees someone else. And I will move somebody so that she can sit down next to me, because it's so important to walk into a meeting and not feel excluded automatically. Certainly you can walk into a meeting and hear exclusive talk about medication and decide to leave.
Yeah.
But if you are walking in and you're the only one of whatever it is, and that goes for queer, that goes for, ethnicity, that goes for language, right? Whatever it is that you're walking in and you can just see, oh, I'm the only one like me. It's not inviting.
Yeah.
You don't want to stay. So I, one of the things I do is make sure that I'm in meetings so that people see a face like mine.
Yeah.
With hair like mine.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
I struggled a lot with my hair.
Yeah.
I hated my hair growing up. Like, I have hair very similar to yours. It's like type 3C.
Yeah.
I
I just learned about that.
The hair
I'm 60
types?
years old and I never heard of like the hair types. What is
Yeah.
that?
I grew up like rural-ish North Carolina. Like, we had a little downtown in our city, but
You're from the down south.
yeah. Yeah, so majority of the people were white. Yeah, there were people of color, of course, but I wanted to be like the majority and have hair like theirs and skin like theirs. So I like grew up for years straightening my hair till it was fried.
Mm-hmm.
I just had a horrible relationship with it. And it seems something like so silly to some, like, oh, it's your hair. But it was so serious and deep for me. And I'm learning that a lot of other women of color have struggled with the same thing.
Well, hair identity is a huge issue, and how your hair impacts your identity, and is your identity your hair. And it's especially true for Black women. And hair identity is not allowed in several spaces in our country. You know, you're not allowed, you know, that Crown Act. You know about that? The Crown Act was passed, I think, 4 or 5 years ago. And it's an act, it's so silly. It allows Black women to wear their hair naturally and work at work, basically. So an employer can't say to a Black woman, "We'd like your hair to be more professional." I'm putting air quotes over that, and meaning straight or back or whatever it is. So the Crown Act prohibits an employer from speaking to a Black woman about her hair and or firing her because her hair does not meet the company standards. And it took a movement for Black women to be able to wear their hair like that, to wear it the way that it comes out of our heads.
That's mind-blowing.
Isn't it?
A whole act for hair.
Yes.
My goodness.
Yes.
But I'm glad, I mean, of course
Yeah.
I'm glad that exists. That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went through this process of, I'm going to do dreads. No, I'm actually shaving all my hair off. And then when I shaved it all off, it's like I'm bleaching it twice a month.
Oh, processing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And guess what? I loved the way my hair was getting fried because it's like, oh, it's a little more straight now.
Yeah.
Crazy. But then now, a year ago, I was like, yeah, I'm growing it out and I'm going to love my hair. Braids are getting me through this awkward stage.
Yes. Yeah. You know, it's something that I think there are so few things in life that you have to intentionally fall in love with.
Yeah.
I think the love is just like automatic for so many. Like I automatically fell in love with my kids.
Yeah.
You know, I fell in love with writing and film, but my hair, I had to teach myself to love it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Me too.
But you will.
Thank
Practice makes a practice. Practice loving your hair.
I actually like that. Practice makes a practice.
It's true. It's true. The more you do it, then you'll develop a practice. That's how I meditated. You know, I just practiced it for years. and
it is a practice.
Yes.
It's not a thing you get perfect.
But then I develop a practice of meditation, right? So there's a way that I meditate now that works for me, which is, I use an app, and I do about 15 minutes every morning at the same time. I'm 189 days right now.
On a streak?
Yes.
I love that.
When we went to Fiji, I went to Fiji for my 60th birthday. You cross the time date line, whatever it is, you either lose or gain a day. I can't remember which one.
Oh, wow.
I lost my streak because I was so mad. I'm like, no, I have to rebuild.
You worked so hard for that.
I worked so hard. Next time I do that, I will do another meditation before we cross that, whatever that date line is.
Wow.
Man, I was angry.
That's so silly.
I was like, I woke up the next morning, I was like, 0.
Right.
No way.
Wow.
Yeah.
What benefit has meditation given you?
I don't know. You know,
Wow.
I don't know. I take vitamins. I meditate. I don't notice much of a difference if I don't than if I do. I skip vitamins sometimes. I don't feel any different. But what I know is that as a whole, when I drink my water and work out and meditate, eat well, eat clean, like all the stuff, get enough sleep, I am much better than when I don't, as a whole. But it's not like I know that what any one of those components actually does for me.
Yeah.
And it's like, Jenga, I can take one of the legs out and I'm probably still going to be okay. But I also don't know if I do that over time, what happens. I haven't done that yet. I haven't eliminated any one of those things for any length of time. I'm too scared.
Yeah.
I'm risk averse, because like, what if I do and I start to get anxious again and then I'll start to need something and then maybe, a pill will look good to me or maybe a drink will look good to me. I don't know. So it's probably fine, but I'd rather not risk it.
What would you say your foundation is in your life and maybe recovery?
Circa now 2025, the world is a shit show. And, all the stuff that I talked about to keep my serenity to bulletproof that has been a daily practice of limiting, filtering out what I look at on social media, the news. I'm on 2 really toxic text chains. And these women just like pour the news onto them, like, can you believe this? And look what they did now. And it's like, So I have to really limit my exposure to those text chains, because even if I limit it elsewhere, it'll still bleed through there. I really intentionally watch light TV and like, read light things. Like I'm really careful with my reading, like what I allow in. I'm very much a person who believes in staying in your own lane, but I'm also a literary activist. I write articles about what's going on in the world. And I write those articles from the perspective of a Black woman, a Black mom, a Black divorced mom in recovery. And like, here's my lens on what's happening now. I haven't written this quarter because I'm still processing what's happening now. But I'll probably write an article, before the end of the year on what's happening. But I write all the time about what's happening. I don't publish it. Writing is how I make sense of the world. It's really important for me.
Would there be one that you'd be willing to share?
No. No, it's too raw. It's too raw. It's, well, I will say this one thing. This is really controversial. So I won't say the most controversial part.
Okay.
But right now, there's this war in Israel and in Gaza. And a lot of people that look like me are really being vocal about what's happening in Gaza.
Mm.
And it looks like it's Jews versus the brown people. That's kind of what it looks like, right? I'm not saying that's what it is, but that's kind of what it looks like. My ex-husband is Jewish, and my kids are Jewish.
Wow.
So I have 2 brown Jewish sons. They went to Jewish preschool. I did Shabbat with them every Friday night. Loved the high holidays. We always spent them together as a family. So I have roots in Judaism. I'm not Jewish, but I have roots in that religion. I think it's beautiful. I love the stories. I love the ceremonies. It was important for me, for my kids to have that exposure. And I find myself in a very interesting place now because my kids are both brown and Jewish. And I don't find a lot of people like them. I find that it's either or. And they're on opposite sides. So it's a place that I think I need to write from as someone who is the mother of these brown Jewish kids in the nation, like I said, 2020, circa 2025, with everything that's going on in the world.
Of course. Oh, I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah.
Well, I think this has been great, and I'm really excited. I'm happy that I've gotten to know you in this the past two hours.
Yes.
Just about.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I'm so glad you guys came.
Yeah.
And interviewed me in my home office.
Yeah. Thank you for allowing us to come in and set up.
No, this is great. I didn't have to drive anywhere.
You're like, I'm just walking downstairs.
Just walk downstairs. Actually, I came in right before you guys did, but still, it was very, very convenient for me. So thank you.
Of course.
Thank you both.
Yeah, and thank you for taking the time, getting vulnerable, and maybe getting a little uncomfortable and breaking some stigmas, honestly. So thank you.
All right, great.